Trying to lose weight? It's time to try Hers. At forhers.com/4u, you can access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss treatments tailored just for you. These include oral medication kits or compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hers, pricing for oral medication kits start at just $69 a month for a 10-month plan when paid in full upfront. No hidden fees, no membership fees. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hers brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. Reach your weight loss goals with help through Hers. Get started at forhers.com/4u to access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss plans. That's forhers.com/4u, forhers.com/4u. Paid for by Hims and Hers Health. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions at forhers.com apply. Weight loss solutions are not one size fits all. Hers makes it simpler to get started and stick with a weight loss plan, backed by expert-guided online care that puts your weight loss goals first. These include oral medication kits or compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hers, pricing for oral medication kits start at just $69 a month for a 10-month plan when paid in full upfront. No hidden fees, no membership fees. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hers brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. Reach your weight loss goals with help through Hers. Get started at forhers.com/4u to access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss plans. That's forhers.com/4u, forhers.com/4u. Paid for by Hims and Hers Health. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions at forhers.com apply.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
From the land of the Shogun, the Bushido blade.
In the name of the U.S. government, I demand the return of the stolen sword, the Bushido blade.
Bushido means beauty, honor, and courage.
For us, death sharpens life.
The Bushido blade, starring Richard Boone, Sonny Chiba, Frank Converse, Laura Gemser, James Earl Jones, and Toshiro Mifune as the Shogun's commander. In a daring quest for the weapon that would unite two worlds. The Bushido blade, it cuts to the heart of courage.
Welcome to Rankin Bass, an offhand joke that became a podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me is a bosun who's taller than a horse, Mr. Chris Dashew.
I prefer to go by my stage name, Richard Boone, but since Richard Boone has already come and gone, it's actually Dick Boone. So I just go by Dick Boone now.
How about we just call you Dick? Also along for the ride is Admiral Richard Haddam.
I've been called Dick many times.
On this podcast, we discuss the works of Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass, specifically some of their stop motion and animated work, but yet again, we are in live action territory as we look at the 1981 film, The Bushido Blade. Yes, it's Richard Boone, the last dinosaur himself, at the helm as Commodore Perry, heading a crew consisting of Frank Converse, Mike Starr, and Timothy Patrick Murphy, who all get to interact with the likes of Mako, Toshiro Mifune, and Sonny Chiba, as we tell the very windy tale of the titular Bushido Blade, a gift from the Emperor of Japan to Commodore Perry to seal the new relationship between America and Japan, a relationship we all know will go swimmingly and never have any problems.
That was my favorite part at the end. It's like, this will be good for both of our countries. It's like Ron Howard cuts in. It was not. Dun, 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 like fucking, or more like just like that bump, 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 just like fucking Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know what the point of the end of this movie was, because it was, guys, we know how this ends.
It was ironic. If white men and Asian women could simply come together in the rattan-covered walls of the Japanese domiciles, everything would have been fine. There was a moment of hope. And now we realize that later that moment was fumbled.
Richard, has anyone ever told you could sell snow to the Eskimos? You just convinced me this movie was not as insane as it was. Holy moly, what an insane film.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but at the end, they still end up signing the treaty even without the blade.
Without the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is not present.
Then they show up with the blade and it's like, oh, it's all good. We did that. So basically the whole movie is a waste of time.
Well, and the blade is viewed as like these savages, and they're important thing, like, you know, like something that, you know, like the Shankara stones in Indiana Jones, something to that effect, where it's like, we need this thing, but everybody, you know, the white people are just kind of rolling their eyes. I mean, Richard Boone kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, oh, this fucking blade is going to hold us up. And then it doesn't matter anyways. It's the messaging in this movie is bizarre, but not surprising given what we've seen from these Rankin and Bass movies.
You know, the message of the movie, I was sort of joking, but now I'm not joking, was the second act I wasn't expecting. It turned out to be, okay, you three go out on your own into Japan, far away from the harbor, actually go in country and do this thing. Well, by doing that thing, what it really just did, they immediately all separate. It gives each one of them a chance to have a separate adventure. For two of them, a woman is central in that adventure. The different philosophies, like they're the ones who actually went and lived a little bit of what Japan was at the time. So it feels like at the end of the movie, they were sort of like, whoa, we know something now about the Japanese people in all these different areas, you know, the agricultural and the warrior and the royal and all these different things. In all these different ways, yes, sexual also, and sumo wrestling. And they're the ones who come away sort of like, yeah, the Bushido Blade kind of was irrelevant to actually knowing something about the people that we're signing this treaty with.
But yet they never make it back to the ship at the end of the movie, so none of the knowledge is ever transferred to anyone.
Well, wait a second. No, don't they? At least one of them does. Don't they all sort of make it? Don't they?
Sure, the squirreliest of the three does.
Yeah, Tim Patrick Murphy, the Robin Burr, a.k.a. the nephew of Mike Starr, Bosun Cave Johnson.
The late Timothy Patrick Murphy. He died at 29.
That's messed up, man. The whole time I was watching Frank Converse, I kept thinking that he was Doug McClure. It took forever for me to realize that he's not the same person as Doug McClure.
Now, was Doug McClure the character that Phil Hartman plays on Futurama?
Oh, but that's The Simpsons. That's Troy McClure. You may know me from such films as H is for Herpes.
Doug McClure, I mostly know him as he was in a whole series of Edgar Rice Burroughs adaptations in the early 70s, like The Land That Time Forgot, At the Earth's Core. He's got that same type of chin, but Frank Converse, he's got an interesting look as well. And I was looking him up, and apparently his most famous role is being in Baba Black Sheep. Otherwise, it's like nothing that really stood out. Mostly a lot of soap opera work, and I could totally see him being a soap star.
He looks like a perfect character actor to play someone in like the president's White House in the 70s. Do you know what I mean? He just has that look to him.
Like New England, rugged, good looks.
Kind of looks like Robert Redford. Like Robert Redford, but not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he could meet with H.R. Haldeman, something like that. You know what I mean? Like, he's got that look to him. And it kind of makes sense because he's also in some other Western stuff. So putting him in this movie, he kind of has that rugged American look to him, I think. You know, Clint Eastwood, John Wayne. And then you have Mike Starr, whose facial hair, my friends, is just c'est magnifique.
Seriously, how great is he? He was the Daniel Stern of the 1970s.
This is one of his earliest roles, too. And he just takes it over. I mean, every scene with him, I'm just like, yeah, more of this guy, please. I want more of him.
He has been in 10 million things and still is.
And he's in my favorite movie, Goodfellas, where he plays, I mean, again, I would say a smaller role, but still a crucial role to kind of the grand scheme of the movie. But in every scene he's in that movie, he steals it. I mean, Jesus Christ. And then, obviously, I think most people my age know him from Dumb and Dumber, where he steals practically every scene of that movie that is in. Mike Starr is just, like you mentioned, Richard, one of the more recognizable character actors who's been working for fucking 50 plus years now. Holy moly.
Because like in the first 15, 20, it's almost like the end of the first act before suddenly he's there. He's like, oh, he's one of the guys that's going on the movie. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. And then suddenly he's so fun and so engaging. Yeah, he was great.
One of the most recognizable character actors working that I can think of. I mean, again, when you see him, you know exactly who he is. And you know exactly the kind of voice that's going to come out of his mouth when he opens it. In this movie, it's a little different than kind of what I was expecting. But the facial hair and that just like the look is just so never going to see Mike Starr looking like this again. I would wager a guess.
Well, this was a weird time for American culture and Japanese culture and the way that we intersected. This was around the time of things like Shogun, I think, was the year before. Though I do have to say, from what I've read, this was shot in 78, released in 81. So it's right there during the whole time of like Bad News Bears go to Japan, Shogun's going on. I'm trying to remember what else was happening. And of course, this is all right around the time that the big three automakers are starting to collapse and we're starting to get Japanese automakers coming in and eating our lunch. So there was a lot of like, oh my gosh, Japan is waging a second war against us, this time an economic war. Of course, I forgot 1941, also 1979. So a lot of weird intersections of Japan and America at this time.
Perhaps one of the weirdest was the phenomenon of Pink Lady and Jeff.
Oh boy, one of my favorites. If you could look at my shelf, you would see I've got the box set back there.
Are you serious? Oh, you're a hero.
I thought that was a fever dream, but I watched every single episode when that was on TV back in the day, back when it was originally airing.
Before his tragic death, Gilbert Gottfried had Jeff on the show, and this was just like a few months ago. And they talked in detail about how that show even happened. And how those women quite seriously did not speak English. It was just like, they're big in Japan. We're putting them on here. You're going on with them, Mr. Altman. Here we go. And it was just like, I went to introduce myself and they seemed really friendly until I realized that literally, hello, nice to meet you was all they could say. I think it was welcoming and I think it was fascination with Japan. I think for most Americans, it was like, oh yeah, what is this culture? And Shogun, James Clavell's Shogun had a lot to do with it.
I don't know if it was just pure fascination or if there was that. I mean, God, what's that awful, speaking of Ron Howard.
Gung Ho.
Gung Ho. Oh my God. That is one of the worst, because there was a lot of racism going on around Japanese people because of this economic war that was happening.
You're in Detroit.
Yes. Oh boy. Yeah. You couldn't, if you drove a Toyota onto the lot and parked there, say goodbye to your car.
I was in Los Angeles, so it was just like, yeah, sure, let's go to a sushi bar. It's this new food. It's raw fish. What? A gong tells you a Japanese character is arriving.
And don't forget, even our good friend Steven Spielberg gets in on the kind of Japan craze in the 80s, Richard, with a film that we talked about so long ago, Empire of the Sun.
Yeah, that was a little, what was that, 85 or something? It was a little
87, later. But still kind of in that same wheelhouse.
And then it all changed with Michael Crichton's Rising Sun.
Oh my God! Talk about racist.
It all changed. That and Showdown in Little Tokyo. You have the biggest dick on a man I've ever seen.
Well, and there was also Black Rain and Year of the Dragon.
Black Rain. I remember that one.
A friend of mine has been approached to redevelop Black Rain into a feature film. And he was like, it's going to take some work.
I stand by my statement that things that are bad should be the things that should be adapted again, not good things. Because things that are good don't need to be redone. Take things that are middle of the road.
Yeah, the things that don't age well, remake those and comment and fix the thing that didn't age well so that it's interesting. It's like, oh, cool. Oh, instead of Michael Douglas, it's Idris Elba. That's weird. Okay, there's a whole new way to look at this.
But Bushido Blade, I don't think they're going to be remaking that.
No, though I have to say it's a very ambitious film, to the point where I was thinking, is this a book? Just because there's so many threads. Richard, you mentioned that there are the three guys who are sent out, and each one of those guys has their own adventure. It's almost like if this is a pilot for a TV series or something, because each one of these stories could have been developed into its own thing. Because you've got Frank Converse and his relationship with the girl who is of mixed race. Then you've got Mako and that girl, and then the younger guy, Timothy. And then you've got Mike Starr, who's just kind of wandering around and hangs out with sumo wrestlers and stuff, and then eventually their paths cross. So I appreciated what was going on. I recognized Sonny Chiba, of course, and I knew his character way better than who eventually is the bad guy. What's his name? Baron Zen or something like that. And I'm just I wish that had been a more recognizable face and had more gravitas to his role, because it just feels like mysterious forces are at work when really there's one guy who's no, we need to remain isolationist. We don't want the Americans here, but we don't really get his voice too well in the film.
Which I think would have been an interesting counterpoint to the, oh yeah, let's sign the paperwork with them, no big deal. There were people that were not wanting to do what happens in the movie. Understandably so.
Was the implication that the guy who signed the treaty with Richard Boone, was the implication that, okay, now that I've done this, I have to go kill myself?
Not that I got. I didn't get that Mifune had to kill himself.
But I understand where Richard's coming from, because he's he has to weigh it on his soul now.
Yeah, it's I've lost faith. And because of the tropes the movie trades in, I literally almost expected him in that boat as they were sailing away to just keel over, and we see the hilt of the sword in his gut. And we're oh, maybe this wasn't a great idea. But that didn't happen. So that's the movie in my head rather than the movie on the screen. When our listeners see the movie, which they will in droves, they will understand that did not happen.
But someone does commit seppuku in this film. Yeah. While his head is being cut off at the same time.
Oh, yeah. And you get that freeze frame. Well, yeah, that's how you do it. You get the Kaisho Kondun who chops off the head, and then, you're slicing your belly with the short sword.
Yeah, but why do both? Like it's a murder-suicide all on the same guy.
To relieve them of their pain. Like, it's
Right.
really to show that they're willing to disembowel themselves, but you quickly cut off the head to relieve them of their pain.
And is that a thing? Is that like a real thing?
If they were like, if it was honorable, if it was dishonorable, they're not granted the head cutting. They just disembowel themselves. They do the up and they do the side and then up. Which is like fucking gnarly, man. I'll tell you, that's the funniest thing about this movie. Not funny, but kind of the weirdest thing. Of all the things we've watched, this has nudity.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my
This
God.
has blood and gore and decapitation. Like, farther every day we stray from Rankin and Bass's stop motion loving light, because we're farther than we've ever been at this point, really. There were breasts in this film, and I was like,
We started with a little red-nosed reindeer, and now we got a bathhouse filled with nude men and women. And that's just the start. I got to tell you, man, there was plenty of grown-up material for little Richie.
I did really appreciate how the English people are much more like, oh, God, they expect you to bathe once a week.
They're horrified. They're like, literally, it's like, it's going to kill us. It's like, wait, they're taking us to a bath. No, here's where we draw the line. We will risk our lives to avoid being exposed to soap and water.
And a very underused, underappreciated James Earl Jones shows up. And I'm just like, wow, where did this guy come from?
they left us. We've been prisoners for years. It's like these assholes have been sitting in a cage for like how many years? Which that's real. That happened.
I want to see that movie.
What? Just guys eating one another after they die in a cage in the Japanese heat?
No, I want to see the Great Escape / Papillon / whatever about those guys led by James Earl Jones. I was not, did you guys know he was in the movie? I for whatever reason, I was just like, wait, could that possibly be?
I can't remember if I saw his name in the opening credits, because I've seen this movie multiple times now, because I saw it before I spoke with Benni Korzen for the interview that we'll hear later. I watched it for this, and I think I watched it a third time just because the first time I was kind of confused because of all these different storylines. I was just like, what did I just watch? I need to see this again.
Well, there was a lot of very specific sort of political stuff in the Frank Converse storyline. That's the one that got deepest into, okay, what is the meaning of the Bushido blade? What is the meaning of the old empire? Who stands for the old ways? What are the factions that are pushing for the new? What exactly is that? And then I did get a little lost, but I understood in general, okay, they're talking about that stuff.
Yeah, the Mike Starr stuff was, I think, the most fun, kind of the most lighthearted and fancy-free of the three, right? I mean, the sumo wrestlers, you know.
They do that thing where for a second I'm like, oh, so obviously this is going to be, oh shit, he's got to fight, a sumo wrestler. Like, this is danger. They're going to try to hurt him or something. And then it's like, oh no, they're not going that way at all. They're in a bar having an arm wrestling contest, and now they're all going to buy each other shots.
Like, I would have been fine to just follow him the entire movie. Just like Mike Starr traversing Japan, like 1880s Japan, just like walking around doing stuff. Like, I don't care about Frank Converse fighting this guy. Like, I mean, again, it's entertaining, but I think it's just infinitely more fun, obviously.
And then clearly the Japanese are just like, oh, Mike Starr, he's a cool guy. You fuck with this guy. Come on, man.
Looks like a jovial American.
Did you see how much sake he picked up in that big crate over there? Look at that guy's pretty cool. Now let's drink it all.
This guy can hold his sake.
That was my other favorite thing. He's like crawling up into that lighthouse and he's like, oh, liquor. And she's like, no, that's for lighting the fucking light, you idiot. He's like, oh, this smells great. Like, you're going to go blind. You're going to drink wood grain alcohol or whatever the hell that is. Yeah. Again, like, when you get character actors who are just so good at what they do, they steal the show. And he steals the show.
Well, it's like Mako. When he shows up, it's just like, okay, yeah, this guy, all right, whatever you're up to, I am interested in hearing it. Tell me how you know English in this time period, and I'm very curious to know more about you and your story. Take that little guy under your wing and, help him out, maybe get him laid. That's great, but I just, really appreciate when he shows up and all of the stuff to do with him. I was like, yeah, just have Mako and Mike Starr team up and solve mysteries in feudal Japan.
And this is right before Conan. This is the year before Conan the Barbarian, which is I would say undoubtedly Mako's kind of most famous role, right? Fortunately, unfortunately, determining how you feel about the Destroyer.
So now I got to circle back and ask the question that I always ask about these live action movies. Okay, so this was one of their later ones.
This is the last one. Is it not?
Last to be released, though, from what I read, shot 78, released 81. So I think the White Ape comes out in between there. And I want to say it's the same writer-director team, because we've run into these guys a few times now. I think these are the guys from the Bermuda Depths, and what was the one we watched? Not Sins of Dorian Gray, but another one that we watched.
Dinosaur?
Last Dinosaur, thank you.
It almost feels like Rankin and Bass were like, or Arthur Rankin was like, oh my God, there's this cultural interest in Japan. I've got deep roots with this company. We've got to cash in on this. Again, that's my assumption.
That's the thing that makes sense, right?
Right. Did this movie, so what happened with it? Was it in theaters? Was it on television? What was...
It had to have been in theaters with all the nudity.
Right. There's no way that could have gone on network television.
Well, with a little creative snip, you could get around.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's also fair. But it doesn't denote anywhere that there's a different version of this movie floating around. So I would lead me to believe it came out in theaters.
Last Dinosaur was on ABC. This one doesn't seem to have that.
Which was weird, which is why, like, when I saw nudity and, like, grotesque violence, not like The Last Dinosaur's comically stupid, like, over-the-top violence, I was like, fuck, these guys are getting decapitated. Like, in the first 5 minutes of the movie, right? Somebody's getting their head cut off in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Like, all right, like, here we go. But I did not expect nudity. But like Mike said, that would lead me to believe this came out in theaters. This movie has very little information tied to it outside of the Rankin and Bass book. But even the Rankin and Bass book doesn't make it very clear kind of what happened to this movie.
My favorite moment of violence was when, toward the end, when she throws her sword at the guy on the horse. And there's just a moment where we're on his face and he's like, what just happened? And then you pull back and the sword is going through his neck like an arrow through the head. It's just like, and then he just keels over. And I'm like, oh, man, that's badass.
Again, I don't want to trust IMDb, but IMDb says it was released on cable first, and then they released it in theaters.
I believe that.
But it was 104 in theaters, 92 on TV. Again, that's IMDb, though. Doesn't say it on Wikipedia, so it's only showing up on IMDb, which is why I don't necessarily outright trust it.
But by the 80s, cable was a thing.
The thing is, like, this movie doesn't even feel like it was made in the 80s. Like, obviously, because it wasn't, but it feels so late 70s.
Yeah, or mid 70s, yeah.
Yeah, the look and the feel, like that. And that's the other thing. Like, when this comes out in 81, who is going to see this?
It's like that was this weird period where you could have really scranky movies getting theatrical releases.
But is anyone going to see it?
Drive-ins, second run, regional. There were a lot of shitty movies that were not Star Wars. Yeah. There was a whole hierarchy. Now everything is approved.
Primo all the time.
Everything is produced at a very high level, even independent films. You never go to a movie
TV.
And go, I couldn't hear what they were saying, or that one shot was out of focus, or the special effects sucked. Everything is like, no. You can make something that looks good. Now it's just a matter of writing, directing, and performance.
If you go out and you do an image search, you'll come across so many different movie posters for this, more than television type of things or TV ads or anything. Also released on VHS in so many countries, like just a real cursory look. There's Norwegian versions, Swedish versions, German versions. I even read a review of this where the person that was reviewing it didn't realize they bought a German version of the DVD, but then luckily there were English dubbing on there. So, but yeah, it was, there's a big ad on the IMDb listing for the summer of 82 Thorn EMI video. So it's when it came out in the UK, I believe.
And that was a big thing. That was a whole new market that had never existed, the home entertainment market, where suddenly people, not a lot of people, but people were starting to own VCRs. So from the beginning of the 80s to the end of the 80s was the VCR revolution. And that's when everyone bought their top 200 movies on VHS. Then DVDs came out, so they threw those away and bought their DVDs. And then streaming came out and they threw away all of those.
I still have my DVDs. I'm never getting rid of them. I refuse because I know better. You have to know better at this point. Like, we can't go any further. So that's the nexus of physical media is DVD, not Blu-ray, because Blu-ray is its own problematic thing. Most things never got Blu-ray releases, but man, DVD.
DVD you can watch literally on demand. You can't trust that Peacock is going to keep showing the Rockford Files. They can decide, no, we're not showing that anymore. May come back, may not.
People were about to riot when Kolchak was taken off of MeTV.
Yeah. And no one wants it. We're not in a culture anymore that waits. I want to see it, and I want to see it starting within the next 5 minutes.
Well, speaking of Kolchak, I mean, what's insane about Kolchak is we were on the re-release, Mike, obviously, the one that Kino did. Before that, it was like 2004. So, I mean, again, I got that DVD from my dad in high school, so that had to have been around when it was. That's 18 fucking years that stuff's essentially unavailable unless you want to shell out. I mean, those Kolchak box sets on eBay were not and are not cheap. So where else are you going to see the show? And that's the physical media. Like, people can poo-poo physical media all they like, takes up space, whatever, fine. I don't care. Like, I'm going to hold on to the fucking DVD binders that I have. And stuff like Bushido Blade, I think, is a reason why. Because this movie, is it on DVD?
You can still find it on DVD. It's definitely not on Blu-ray.
Right. That's as far as it went, right? So,
and it's out there on YouTube, a bootleg copy, as well as an Italian dubbed version of it, which I happened upon first. By the way, do not confuse this with Revenge of the Bushido Blade from 1978. I doubt that's why they moved the release date to not conflict with this Jay Wertz film, produced by Frank E. Johnson of many great exploitation films, starring Cameron Mitchell. Don't confuse it with that one, though. I'm kind of curious to see it because I like a good bad Cameron Mitchell film.
In the same year, 2 movies were made, Bushido Blade and Revenge of the Bushido Blade, and they're totally unconnected.
Totally unconnected.
So is the Bushido Blade then a real thing? Is this a real bit of history?
Well, there's a video game series called Bushido Blade as well, so it must be. Like, it's either that or it's just a really convenient pairing of 2 words that sound good.
Well, Bushido is the way of the samurai. Just you take that and you add the word blade to it, and yeah, you're
sounds
all
cool.
set.
Alliteration be damned.
Excalibur. Okay.
Well, and Bushido Blade, when it was released in theaters, again, according to IMDb, was called The Bloody Bushido Blade, speaking of alliteration. So they're really hitting it hard. BBB, baby! I mean, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, don't feel you're not going to get blood. Don't worry. You will get blood.
If you wanted blood in all the... If you wanted blood in all those Rankin Bass Christmas specials, ladies and gentlemen, you've got it here. You've been waiting 2.5 years for breasts on the Rankin Bass podcast, and it's here.
I have.
They could have been in The Last Dinosaur. We were close with the Hazel character that Richard was so enamored with.
This was a tasteful, I don't know. This did not feel like a cheap, stupid movie. Well, I mean, sometimes you watch it and sometimes that's fun. Sometimes a cheap, stupid movie is what you want. And when it's called The Last Dinosaur, that you should possibly not expect more. But this one kind of felt like, no, this was an afternoon's entertainment. Kind of serious. Production values were decent. A lot of fights, a lot of fun. If I was a 10-year-old, I would feel like I got a lot of fights, a lot of sword fighting, a lot of action. And I had to put up with a little bit of nudity. And then a few years later, I would have liked it all.
This is a movie with a capital M.
I remember really liking Shogun when that was out, and that was one of those like rush home to see more of it. And then years after that, I think I was 18 when my family got the big Shogun box set, rented it from the video store, and we watched it all again. And there were so many things that I was just so enamored with when I saw it the first time, like the beheadings. So seeing beheadings when you're, I can't remember, I guess I would have been 8 years old when the original Shogun showed on TV. That really made quite a mark. So I would have been all about this movie had it come on cable.
Mike, you're a typical gaijin.
Hi.
Oh.
I am surprised that we have gone this whole time without talking about that great Camptown Ladies song.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, blackface.
How about the Camptown Ladies?
The Camptown Ladies.
The Camptown Ladies. Oh, you know.
I thought that was all we were going to talk about, and then the movie started and it actually got good. But my God.
If the movie had sucked, that's all we would have been talking about. If that had been in anything else that we had talked about up until this point, there would have been nothing but that to talk about, Richard.
What the fuck was it? Was that had to be real? Someone had to have done
it. Was not a fever dream. You saw it, and so did we.
Well, no, but what I mean is somebody must have cracked open a history book and gone, oh, here's a weird thing. They would actually do these weird blackface minstrel performances as a part of sharing our culture on the first night when we all, broke bread together. And so we should do that because it'll be a good, sort of weird, anachronistic, blah, 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 1978, whatever. Oh my God. Oh my God.
I could not believe it, really. This film came out in 81 in theaters. Like, Jaws the people who went and saw it must have just been like, the fuck are we seeing here? Like, what? Whew.
This ad is fantastic, this ad that you shared. It's starring Sonny Chiba and James Earl Jones.
Oh boy, wouldn't you have been disappointed had you gone expecting James Earl Jones to be the star of the film?
In the movie for 5 fucking minutes, if that.
Bushido means violent death, plus the second shocker, Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right? One of these things is not like the other. Clearly, the Bushido blade does not belong.
Oh, boy. And 3 pictures of Sonny Chiba with this. The great, I didn't realize that the Bushido blade logo has a drop of blood coming off of the A.
Did it always, or just in this print ad?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll have to look at the DVD box cover.
But to answer your question, rated R, Richard.
Rated R, yeah, violent death. It's like, hey, if you're looking for thrills, 17-year-old dudes who don't have girlfriends, go see this. There'll be some nudity. The heads get chopped off. And then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, same thing with the chainsaw.
What's really funny is it kind of, I think, reinforces in my mind how this movie was positioned when it was released, which was as an exploitation film. Because look what it's paired with. But the funny thing is, like you mentioned, Richard, I would contend this is not much of an exploitation film. It takes itself way too seriously.
Yeah, it's not primarily that. It is that in part of its execution, and very cannily so. I think they were like, okay, guys, we're going to do this and we're going to do a good movie. But yeah, some people are going to take the clothes off. We're going to see some boobies and we're going to see some guys getting their heads chopped off.
I gotta just have Richard as my ringtone saying, we're gonna see some boobies over and over again. And Mike going, yay, in the background. Yay!
I don't know who I am in this moment. Maybe I'm Arthur Rankin. Maybe I'm the head of his studio. Maybe I'm the money guy. I don't know who I am, but someone made it real clear. Guys, you're going to take your shirts off. Ladies, a little bit more than that.
This ain't Rudolph XXX. Like, yeah.
Rudolph's Bloody New Year.
It's, you know what, though? I think ultimately it is fun. It's kind of what I was expecting from this movie. I think it does hew a little closer to the self-serious than I was hoping for. That's the thing. I guess when I think about it, Last Dinosaur is pretty self-serious. The title thing alone, Richard Boone is the last dinosaur. It's oh, you're taking all the fun out of this, huh?
Are you talking about the character that he played, Maston Thrust?
Would have been right at home in this film.
Watching Last Dinosaur and then mere weeks later watching this, I am a Richard Boone fan.
You should see him in Winter Kills. He's pretty good in that.
I saw Winter Kills 35 years ago. I remember nothing. I should probably see it again.
I have downloaded all of Heck Ramsey because I've been so curious about that.
Oh, my God.
Well, and he was Paladin, too, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah.
Yeah, he's charismatic. I do.
Yeah, he is Paladin. Yep.
Heck Ramsey was on the wheel, right?
That's right. Yeah, that was the first year, I think, of the wheel. I think it only lasted one season.
It's dangerous. We're getting back into dangerous territory here, Mike, with hewing close to Columbo.
I don't know if Richard Boone is just a very in the moment actor. I don't know if this is a result of him being out of his mind drunk. But when he's on screen, it's like, okay, like from second to second, you don't know what's going to happen. Long, weird pauses before speaking, and then while speaking, drastic changes in volume and intensity that come out of nowhere and seem to mean nothing. I couldn't take my eyes off him.
He reminded me a little of Timothy Carey as far as like, what is this guy going to do? I have no idea what's happening with this character.
I really want to watch Hank Ramsey now. I mean, like, well, we're going. I think clearly somebody's going to.
There's no reason not to.
You like Richard Boone, Richard?
I do. I'm a fan now. I'm Team Boone.
And this is his last. I think Winter Kills was the last one that they filmed, and then this was the last one released, his last performance. One thing I've found very interesting, other than Camptown Lady, there's not a lot of music in this as far as there's no songs. You know, we don't take a break for a song. So it's like poor Maury Laws, he was probably lost.
The Bushido blade. Where's the music? I expect it now.
Where's the hit single?
The Last Dinosaur. Where is it? Come on. Don't leave us hanging. If Ivory Ape doesn't have one, I'm going to be really disappointed.
For sure. I'm hoping that there's like some sort of gentle ape song.
A new sentence has just been invented. Gentle ape song.
Wait a second. There's another movie. We're still doing this. This was not a full episode.
Well, there's still plenty of things left besides the live action stuff, Richard. Why do you pretend like you don't love this?
There's one more Tsugo Nubo Kotani William Overgard joint. But unfortunately, it's not Richard Boone, and that one is Jack Palance.
Yes, but I'm so excited. The name of the movie alone. The Ivory Ape.
Is that based on Eugene O'Neill play? Oh, that was the Hairplay.
And hey, it's also got returning once again from The Last Dinosaur, Stephen Keats.
Well, much like the character, the Ivory Ape never sang for his father.
That's sad.
But if the Wikipedia and IMDb are to be believed, theme music composer, there may be some music with the Ivory Ape, ladies and gentlemen.
Fingers crossed.
We may get some true monkey shines, as they would say.
Be super careful after this movie. We don't know what we're going to see.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. Ivory Ape did get released in theaters, so maybe there will be breasts. Maybe that ape will have tits. Jack Palance is the ape.
Right. He is the ivory.
He is the Ivory Ape.
Twist. Yeah. The whole time he was the ape. Let's go ahead. We have not yet had any interviews on this entire podcast series, but not only do we have one, but we have two interviews for this particular episode. First up, we're going to hear from Benni Korzen, a regular Rankin Bass producer, and after that, we'll hear from Bosun Cave Johnson himself, Mr. Mike Starr, and we'll be back with those right after these brief messages.
Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and I, we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Deaf Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production Podcast Network. We hope to see you online.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, this is Will, a writer of 3 films plus a Christmas special.
And this is Kevin, a writer of 1 and a bit films and 3 and a bit episodes of TV.
Okay. We're screenwriters by day, podcasters by night.
Yeah, okay, Batman. And we're the hosts of The Best Bits, a show where each episode we pick our favourite film scenes from randomly selected, weirdly specific themes.
Such as Best Fight Scene, Best Sex Scene, and Best Tom Cruise Running Scene.
Why should I know these things? Do you know them?
And we have the world's first podcasting AI to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Say hello, Podbot.
Hello.
So, if you're looking for another film podcast to subscribe to, why not check us out?
The Best Bits with Will Collins and Kevin Lehan.
And Podbot.
Yeah, it's good crack.
Irish crack.
So if you want legal crack, subscribe to Best Bits Podcast.
Please.
Hey folks, welcome to the interview portion of the show. First up, we're going to hear from producer Benni Korzen. I know that you got your start in Europe, and I was curious as far as how that went and then how that transition to America happened for you.
I actually come from Denmark, and I lived in Denmark until, I sort of moved around because for a couple of years from early 60s until I moved to New York in 64, and I'm talking about 1964, not 1864. The reason why I moved to New York in 1964 was simply I was chasing a girl. We had, been sort of, we met, and it was one of those things that you do when you are a young person, which I assume you are. The first movie I produced came about because the girl I was chasing dumped me, and I met somebody else. Her name is Annie, and we have now been married for 58 years. She is my age, and she also is as busy as she's ever been. One reason for that, but only one of many reasons, is that a young woman convinced her to get onto TikTok. This is less than a year ago, and Annie has had, all told, she just got from TikTok some information that indicates that she has had 1.6 billion views in about 10 months. One of her TikToks was about Krispy Kreme. It was seen by 7.5 million views, but then it had something like, many hundreds of what is called sounds, which is people who take Annie's voice and then put their own image to that. So they lip sync with Annie's voice being heard. And that spreads. So it's the TikTok phenomenon. Of course, it's not the only one. Facebook and Instagram and so on do the same. But right now, it appears that TikTok is the one that has more traffic. Anyway, back to me. Back in the mid 60s, the reason why I actually produced the first movie then, a movie with the title Dr. Glass. It's a title of a book that Annie had found in a local public library, and she brought it home, and I read it. And I knew the author, who was Swedish. It's a story that takes place around the turn of the century. So, and that movie then led me to make more movies. It's like you meet people, and those that you enjoy working with, you continue working with. Early on in that, actually earlier, before I had moved to New York, I spent a year in Paris, and I met an American by the name of Paul, and we are still friends. He is older than me, if you can believe it, and his career took off when, after many failures, he decided to get a property that ended up being the Police Academy, the first Police Academy movie. And then it was followed by, 5, 6, 7 others. And so we just saw him and his third or fourth wife. And it's wonderful when old guys can still remember what happened when they were young guys. And so we had a lot of fun talking about what we did in Paris in 1960. At some point, I met Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. I forget how it came about, but the first thing that I worked on for them was a Danny Kaye show that was shot in Denmark. And, because of his song, Wonderful Copenhagen, or whatever it was called, that sort of was known almost like not 100 years ago, but this is something that he was known for. We met, and after that, I worked for Jules and Arthur on 5 movies. They had already begun to specialize in those animated specials that are still in their something like 45th year showing. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and they did something like 6 or 7 of those that are still being shown every year. They asked me to sort of deal with the live action movies, and so we did 5, one of which was Bushido Blade. The titles are will tell you a lot. One was called The Bermuda Depths. One was called The Ivory Ape. And then there was The Last Dinosaur. And the very first real movie that I worked on with Arthur and Jules was a musical called Marco, about Marco Polo. And we shot that in Japan because Arthur had already established for the animation activities a series of strong Japanese contacts, very wonderful creative people, most of whom we later also used for the live action movies. That's how I got involved in making movies.
Were they solely directed by a Japanese man, or was it like a co-production of a Japanese director and an American director at the same time?
One example of what they did, which had nothing to do with Japan, was the Jackson 5. They did now, however, since they also already at that time had certain there was Arthur who was the locomotive there, had Japanese contact. I think some of the animation was actually also done in Japan as early as for the Jackson 5. But Kotani was the director that the first time we worked with him, or it was actually, I think, he met Arthur before I had anything to do. But I think the 3 movies that he directed, of the 5 I was involved in, were fine. The co-director of, I don't remember why we did that, but Kotani was a Japanese director. He spoke no English. We had a translator, but in spite of that linguistic difference, we worked extremely well. He had found a way to fit in spite of the fact that he spoke no. I mean, he understood, 100 words, but spoke not one of them. when you in his position, the word action when you start, he did very well. And also, obviously, he directed in the 5 movies, in the 3 movies or 3.5 movies we were talking about. The cast was very much American and English speaking. So you can ask yourself, how can that be? Well, it worked. There are certain times when we do things in a different way than the formula way. He definitely was part of the Rankin Bass family, so to speak.
Well, yeah, it feels like a lot of those films were all made with, you've mentioned how you're producing on all of those, and then you've got William Overgard as the writer, Murray Laws is always doing the music. It feels like there is just this very tight-knit group of people behind the scenes.
I kind of knew the New York scene then. I had nothing to do with Los Angeles. But in New York, they were unique in that they had a miniature studio, so to speak. I mean, compared to the standard huge studio with 2,000 employees. The two of them had created a way of using the same people. They like, one-stop shopping, so to speak. And you just mentioned Bill Overgard and Moore Laws, and there were several others who were repeat members of an ongoing number of projects. There was a Japanese young man, at this point he's not so young, Masaki Izuka, who more or less, whenever we were in Japan, Arthur kind of treated him as if he was his son. And they had that kind of relationship. And because Masaki was very efficient, bilingual, he was more than just a helping, producing hand. He almost kind of became a member of the family. I guess the two of them had between them the talent of working slightly differently than anybody else I've ever worked with. They created a main group that became the locomotive that pulled every train from then on.
What were Jules and Arthur like, just as regular folks as well as coworkers?
Very interesting, to the point of eccentric at certain times. Like any two creative people, they quite often disagreed. They had two different opinions. And so at some point, I had an office within earshot of their two offices, and they were quite often arguing. I'm sure that you know of the history of creativity. Two people cannot possibly be on a one-note creativity. I mean, they had different specialties. Jules was a songwriter and created both lyrics and music, and Arthur was simply a very efficient and smart producer. He early on, I forget his background, I think was advertising. One typical example of how they functioned was, one of the first things that I noticed was that in the conference room of the floor we had in New York, in a building on 52nd Street, there was an easel that had a poster without text. And that poster that they had, one of the Japanese artists that they worked with had created this poster. So here's what I saw. In walked a bunch of executives. I forget for which movie the pitch was that I'm now describing, but here's their pitch style. And this was basically Arthur. The poster was covered by a piece of paper on the easel, and 5 guys walked in. Later, I learned that they were the ABC network top executives, because ABC financed some of those movies we are talking about. Maybe including Bushido blade. Anyway, the 5 guys sat down, and Arthur went up and whipped off the piece of paper, and there was this poster for the project that they wanted to do and for ABC to pay. The pitch then took 20 minutes. They talked about the story, but basically the pitch was really a visual presentation. So they did something in their way that we now do when we create decks. Everybody creates a deck for whatever, and they summarized it all into one poster. And that's why they were very successful.
Tell me about the shooting of some of these films. I know Bermuda Depths looks like a lot of that was actually shot on location or somewhere in the Caribbean.
Yes. Well, it was shot on Bermuda. This is how we also worked. One of the things that I delivered to Arthur and Jules was, from the first movie until other movies that I then did in New York, I was very good at noticing who were the talented people. He had just moved to Bermuda. He had gotten a Bermudian passport, and while he retained his American passport. And so Bermuda was a place where he had a sort of a connection. His question to me was, he basically said, listen, we know nothing about live actions, but you do, so can you put together a crew that can give us some quality? And I said, yes. And so the director of photography, by the name of Jari Sopanen, was a friend who had worked with me as a cameraman. And he did very well. At some point, after we saw some rushes that were flown back and we viewed on a moviola, and Jules said, Jerry is an artist. Those were his words. I don't think we did anything outside of Bermuda. There was no sort of post pickup shots or anything like that.
I imagine Bushido Blade, was that also, I mean, some of that looks like a set, but then there are other parts, were those actually shot in Japan?
Shot entirely in Japan. The one thing I remember about Sonny Chiba was that there was a shot in which he comes riding towards the camera, and very close to the camera, he leans out and picks up something as he's galloping. He was a very experienced stunt person who could do things that no actor could do, and he insisted on doing everything the script had written. So there were certain kind of dangerous thing. I also believe I remember that he injured himself, not seriously, but one of the things that should not have happened, and he handled that like, yeah, well, what movie that I've already done doesn't have that kind of a thing. We all thought he was a very cool guy.
How was Toshiro Mifune to work with?
Well, he was very impressive. I remember 2 things. One, when his performances took place, he knew his lines, he knew everything. He was a very disciplined thespian. The other thing I remember was that, and this has something to do with the fact that in the Far East, especially in Japan, gift giving is very different from what we know here, in the sense that if you give a gift to somebody there, that person is likely to give you back a gift that's better. This is not an unknown, I mean, there's a word for it, but whatever. So at the end of the shoot, we had a standard cast and crew celebration. Arthur had found not a Danish, but a Scandinavian food-wise, and everything they served was from Denmark and Sweden, including open-faced sandwiches and beer and akvavit, which is what we normally drink when we have those sandwiches. So, we had a wonderful meal, except that early on, kind of a a human cortege walked in, like 3 or 4 people carrying on some things they held up, something like many bottles, and the bottles were champagne, which at that time was incredibly expensive because it was like, the best champagne that Mifune had ordered to be delivered, not realizing that champagne and beer and akvavit, it's two different things. This was his return, having been asked to do a role in this American movie. His return was to deliver 10 bottles of the best champagne you could get in the Far East. And I forget how we dealt with that, but I remember this because Arthur had found this. I advised him about this restaurant before we went there, so I was sort of co-responsible. So Arthur said, basically, because he had been to Denmark in the Danny Kaye, for the Danny Kaye thing, so he knew about beer and akvavit. That's why he had picked it. That's my memory of Mifune.
This was also not the first time that Richard Boone had worked on a Rankin Bass production. What was he like to work with?
During the shooting, we were basically on location most of the time, more than the studio in Tokyo was the Toho studio. So, when you live on location, and especially in Japan, you become a little village. And you're a member of this village. And so early on, I learned from his wife the bottle of vodka that Richard brought with him wherever he was. Actually, she sort of diluted it with water. I've dealt with some people can function very well, either being high at all times or being drunk at all times. He was a highly functional person, even though he was basically inebriated all the time. It had something to do with the fact that he was away from his Florida residence, and I don't think he had done too much sort of location shooting. Anyway, it was all, we had a fine time. By the way, the first movie that I was involved in, which, with Arthur and Jules, was this movie about Marco Polo, where one of the highlights for me was to work with or for and actually befriend Zero Mostel. I've had 2 lives all my life. I have 2 different things I do. I have something to do with movies, and I have something to do with art. I paint. And I started that. My first showing was at the age of 14 in Copenhagen. Anyway, so I spent some time with Zero in his studio. He had a studio on 27th Street off Broadway in New York. He was a very serious painter. He had more admiration for being a painter than being an actor. And everybody who knew him knew that. In his very impressive apartment on Central Park West, when you walked in the hallway, staring right at you, very smartly lit and all that, was a painting by Paul Klee, Klee. The world of art was, I think, much more important to him. And by the way, when we got back to Tokyo after location, in my hotel room, I've had a bunch of canvases and paint, and because there were time off on weekends, so I painted. And at one point, there's a knock on the door, and it's Zero. He walks in, and he did. I had not told him that I was this painter, so he looks at this, and with his booming voice, he says, "Okay, one brushstroke of mine, and I'll take these 2 canvases of yours." That was his offer. Later on, I had a friendship with John Avildsen. John Avildsen is the director of Rocky and Karate Kid and so on. Anyway, so at some point, a New York person that I didn't know contacted me and said, I have an idea to make a movie that actually is like 4 different stories that we then put together. And he knew a number of New York people, including Dan Greenberg, Jules Feiffer, 4 well-known writers who he had paid to write a story that then was supposed to be the feature. One of the features that was written, I then got John to come on board to direct. The story was about a mafia don whose daughter is kidnapped. And I mean, it's a bizarre story. I got Zero to come and play a dual part as a mafia don and as the president of the United States. The plot is this, that in order to get the daughter back, what the Don forces the president to do is go on live Saturday night television and make love to his wife in front of 40 million audience members. And so we didn't really have a script ready, so I had to sort of explain to Zero what this was about. And I got to the juicy part. He said, yes. He had a certain, shall we say, natural wildness about him.
How did you get involved with Bob Shea and Alone in the Dark?
Our kids grew up together. I have a son who is same age as Bob's oldest daughter. So by the time New Line was ready to make its second movie, the title of which was Alone in the Dark, Bob knew that I knew some people. And so, again, we shot it in and around New York. And it was something that kind of taught me how interesting at the same time as being complicated making movie, that whole world of making movie. Just before the pandemic, we had lunch together, and I suggested that we work on something, and so we probably have a 50th anniversary or something like that. And of course, Bob's career took off, and the pinnacle was one of the heights was that in year 2000, to celebrate the millennium, Bob chartered a ship that had a crew of 250 people and had 50 cabins. And he then invited many friends that he had worked with over the years onto 4 different voyages. Ours was 10 days in the Caribbean, and another one was went up the Amazon River. Anyway, so on board that boat, there was a salon where everybody gathered at night. People performed, because there were obviously a lot of performers. My wife gave her first performance of something she later created as a one-woman show. And Francis Coppola one day flew in to one of the Caribbean islands that we were anchored by. And when it was my turn to perform, I said, "I'm sorry, I'm not a performer. This is not something that I'm good at." And she said, "Yeah, but do a clown act. I mean, make yourself look ridiculous," because it was a very hip bunch of people there. So here's what I did. There is a levitation game, and it actually works. And what it is that you put a person down sitting in a chair, and then you place 4 people, 2 on each side, and you try to lift this person by just using 2 fingers from each hand. And you try to do that, and nothing happens. Then you do the same, but with an added touch, which is that the 4 people put their hands, without touching, on top of the sitting person's face, and you hold that until you feel certain heat from all the respective hands and the face, and then you do the same thing, and it works. You lift a person. So what I did was I said, Francis, we're going to do a little thing here. Please come up and sit down. And he came and sat down, and then we did it. And this was, somebody filmed it, so I've lost it since. But after we put him down again, he said to me as a joke, Benny, can I buy the rights to this one? This is a good one. And I also said, by the way, what do you weigh? And he said 265. So 4 people, and by the way, the really tricky part is that when you don't bring 4 big guys. So I had selected 3 very normal, smallish women to do this with me, so that nobody could think that we're just cheating. So anyway, this was one of the salon highlights.
You said that you're busier now than ever, and I'm curious, other than working on art, which I'm sure takes a lot of time, what else is going on with you?
We're working on doing a new version, contemporary version of one of the movies I was involved in called Babette's Feast. Yeah, that's one thing we're working on. Another thing is that I bought the rights to a book that was published a couple of years ago that tells a very interesting story of what happened in 1943 when 4 young Danes decided when the Germans had Germany occupied Denmark from 1940, and by 1943, this happened as the only country, they had simply not dealt with the Jews. I'm Jewish, and so there's a long series of reasons why that was. That the history that this happened. So these 4 guys, calling themselves the Elsinore Sewing Club, managed to save 1,500 Danish Jews. I'm one of them. By finding them where they were, we went into hiding because rumor had gotten out that Gestapo would be there the next day, whatever. So they managed to find people and sail them across the water from Denmark to Sweden. And so the story, how that could be, given the fact that the sound between Denmark and Sweden was heavily patrolled by German, heavily armed patrol boats, and German soldiers were everywhere. So how they managed to do this is a very unusual story. It also has some resonance today because, unfortunately, there's 35 million people are refugees and in need of help. Not to mention what's happening in Ukraine. Anyway, that's one project that I'm working to try to turn into a miniseries. And another thing is that we own, with a partner, I own the rights to a screenplay by Buck Henry based on Kurt Vonnegut's book, Jailbird. And another thing that we're working on is a very good director, Mark Forster, is interested but too busy, unfortunately. He's interested in a book we own called Vanished. And we have a very good screenplay. So look, I'm describing to you something that every producer in town deals with at all times. And the only difference here is that I'm 83 and having more fun doing it than I bet you, than 99% of the others, because I actually enjoy the fighting that inevitably develops when creative people are being creative. That's exactly the way.
Well, Mr. Korzen, thank you so much for your time. This was a real treat talking with you.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Up next, we were supposed to have an interview with Mike Starr, and we do, kinda. This is an old interview that I did with Mr. Starr where he talks a little bit about the Bushido blade. I just used that portion of it. Fortunately, Mr. Starr was busy, which means that he was working, and we can never fault our friends for actually working. So here's a little bit of Mr. Starr, and hopefully one of these days we'll get the chance to talk again.
I actually was going to be a poli-sci major, but they would bring the public theater around, Joe Pass Public Theater, to the neighborhoods, and I was getting interested in theater, when they brought them around to the housing projects. I lived in a working class area. I said, geez, I saw people like James Earl Jones, Cleavon Little, all live. And I'm trying to think the other man I saw was incredible. That was in the John Wayne movie, Brown. Oh, God, he was great. So I was starting to get the bug. And my brother was going to Hofstra University. My brother saw me in a high school play and said, this is what you're going to do. I said, no, I'm going to be a congressman or something. I said, I can do it for fun. And one day, my brother, Bo, who we did 6 movies together, he played the dad in Goodfellas. He's playing with the Jets. So my dad and I go out to see him. So I'll make this as brief as possible. Basically, he ambushes me with 2 people from the drama department, the top actress in the country at the time in college, won whatever top actress, and one of the heads of the department. And I'm sitting there, and they give me this pitch about a drama corps. And I'm going, yeah, right, that's what I'll do. I'll be with 50, drama, come on, from like fame, performing arts. So I sat there, I was polite, and they told me about it, and I said, I'll just be a poli-sci major and do a play every now and then. My brother says, hey, schmuck, they have no one like you. No one sounds like you. No one looks like you. That gets into drama. At that time, we're talking late 60s, early 70s. He said, if you're any good, you're going to get a scholarship. Well, sure enough, I was very fortunate. I took the minimum amount of credits and got a scholarship, and stayed 4 more years, did musicals, did everything, even walked on and played football and did these things. And did a couple of interesting things for a while, and these friends of mine conned me into doing a summer theater. I said, nah, I'm going to take a couple of years off, do this. Maybe I'll join this or leave this. And we're married in 1972. Years later. I wound up staying 2 summers at that summer stock theater. 2 years later, we're married, and I'm working every job. I tried to actually go out and play football. I went in this minor league team, and then which I'm writing a script about. Hopefully, do a slapshot story. And 1976, 77, I'm standing there going, "Hey, I had a scholarship for theater. What am I doing? I'm making like $125 a week working at a gym." And I said, "I got to find a way to get in the business." How do you get in the business? Because I had a baby, I had a daughter, I should say that. I'm sorry I'm making it so long. And I said, okay, let me see what I'll do. So I had friends at Hofstra. Gary Epstein became an agent. It's crazy. I mean, Max Snell, who was a Jet Super Bowl player, was trying to help me get a shot at football. And one day I said, there's a movie, Semi-Tough, which I didn't get it in Semi-Tough. But I said, can you get me? He goes, why? You an actor? I said, I'm a lot better actor than a football player. He said, what the hell are you doing? I almost died. My spleen almost exploded on a flight after a Dolphin game. He said, come here. He sent me to an agent, former Met Odd Shamsky and Restless Soul Cynthia Ragland. So I started going out, and I got a couple of commercials. I got me in, and I started doing a lot of theater. Dan Lauria from the Wonder Years put me in a play. I got seen. I got Lou DeJamo, the casting director, saw me, and I got in the movie Cruising, the controversial movie. And they were searching for this guy. They wanted a big guy. I even had to gain weight to do the movie. They wanted a big guy. It was about Commodore Perry, the first Americans into Japan. Well, they went looking for me through old connections, Art Shamsky. I remember he worked at a gym. All these characters, ex-cops working there, said, what do you want with Mike Starr? The guy said, I'm an ex-basketball player. This other guy came, I'm a manager now. We want to put him in a movie. So I get in this movie called The Bushido Blade. And they said, you got to gain weight, lift weights, take acting classes, because I always liked film, but I decided to do theater, and all of a sudden, like, I'm a different person, you know? I hadn't done any film. So Bushido Blade was my first film. They put me on a horse. They said, you just have to sit on it. I was going down cliffs, following action stars like Sonny Chiba. And I got this big red hair. I'm weighing about 300 pounds. It was hysterical. I mean, and the stories I had, there was magic. And then I have a 2-year-old at the time, and I had all these days off in Kyoto. And my wife had been born on American Air Base in England, and there was problems getting a passport. My wife was very young at the time, and they couldn't come over till I was in Tokyo. And I said, I promise someday we're going to return to Kyoto. So a few months later, my wife says, a few months ago, my wife says, there's a conference in Kyoto, Japan. And she takes me to Japan. Bushido Blade had the famous, I don't know if you would know who this is, but he had a big effect on the film. Well, James Earl Jones, of course, was in it. I got to tell him, I wrote a paper on him, and he inspired me. But Richard Boone, who was a great character actor, and he changed a lot of TV, he played a character on Have Gun Will Travel and this and that, one of the last black and white TV shows. And that's another story to tell. So he had a big influence. I spent time with him. And I came back, I thought I was going to be a star in L.A. I'm living in Queens in the projects. Oh, when the film comes out, and guess what? We had our own private premiere when it came on a local TV 3 years later, 2-3 years later. The neighborhood boss threw a big party for me. That's about as much as I saw it, There was a great actor, Mako Uematsu, who was born in Kyoto, actually, and grew up in the States, and he was nominated for an Academy Award. I don't know if he won Sand Pebbles, supporting actor. So I turned to him one day in Japan and said, so how does this business work, Mako? I just go to L.A. and I become a star when this comes out? Because I don't. He said, man, I hope so. He was like a street guy. He was great. He was also a great painter. He said to me, I hope so, but I got nominated for an Academy Award, and 2 weeks later I was cutting trees in L.A. in my tree business. So that was the Bushido Blade, and I'd love to meet you sometime and tell you all the crazy things that happened, but it was a magical experience.
All right, we are back, and we are talking about the Bushido Blade, not the Revenge of the Bushido Blade, the bloody Bushido Blade. I have to say, this is pretty easy to find on DVD and YouTube, like I said, but to your guys' point, I don't think this is streaming anywhere for those people that have to have it on a regular service. It feels like this would be an Amazon Prime thing.
Or a Philo TV, or a my favorite, Tubi. Take your time and go on down to Tubi. Tubi has plenty of this kind of stuff. Like, this is what I think Tubi's stock and trade is. Like, weird movies that have no home.
When I look up Bushido Blade, I don't even get it on Just Watch. I just get all of the versions of Blade, Blade Runner, Blade of the Immortal, Sling Blade, Blade the series, but no Bushido Blade.
The Bushido Sling Blade? Would you watch that film? I killed him with the Bushido Blade.
I signed it with the Emperor.
Yeah. They'll be back. Mm-hmm. I know it.
That samurai lives in his heart, and that's a big place.
Revenge of the Bushido Blade is now available as The Last Reunion, and you can see that on Tubi.
Well, there you go. See? That's where I was expecting that this movie got released under like 5 million different names elsewhere. Right? Like, I've seen this before as, The Way of the Samurai or something to that effect. No, this movie seemed to retain the name Bushido Blade almost everywhere that it went, So,
Chris, what is happening with you in your world, sir?
As for me, the Culture Cast, that's where my movie podcast is. So that's what talking about movies every week. That's what we're doing, Mike. Culturecast.com and CSTACHIW.com, CSTACHI.com. That's my link tree. Go there for all the things that Mike and I work on, like Columbo and Coal Shack and Barney Miller and Dreams for Sale and Midnight Viewing. I think that's all of them.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, you've been on the Culture Cast, and I've been on the Projection Booth, so that's that. And we're on this right now. I plug this show on all the other shows, so yeah, that's where you can go for my stuff. What about you, Richard?
I'm in Toronto right now. They don't say Toronto, and they don't even say Toronto. You got to say Toronto, like a Chrono, Toronto.
You out yourself immediately in that town if you say it as Toronto. They're like, oh, hello, you non-Canadian.
I know, and I want to pass for Canadian, believe me, everywhere I go.
I'm with you. I would like to as well.
We're here just tirelessly producing season 4 of Titans. We're about halfway through. I've written several of them and having the time of my life among the kindest people on earth, the Canadians. So you can see me on HBO Max, Titans, season 1 through 3, season 4 coming in August of 2022.
As for me, you can always see me over at the Projection Booth Podcast. Well, you can't see me, thank God, but you can hear me over at the Projection Booth Podcast, which is available at projectionboothpodcast.com. And yeah, there's links over there to all the other stuff that I work on, usually with Chris, sometimes with Richard. Richard, we got to get you back on the Projection Booth in 2023, my friend.
I'm ready.
Had a great time talking Planet of the Apes with you last time. That was fun.
That was great. Yeah, I'm ready. Whatever you assign me my work, and I will be there on the day of the exam.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Abby Stabby for our artwork, as well as the Great Octopus for our theme music. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back next month with a look at the Rankin Bass film, The Ivory Ape. Can't wait for that. Until then, be sure to rate and review the podcast wherever you get it. Tell your friends, tell your family, and please stay weird.